do me a favour. If you're listening to this, please hit the subscribe button. Like, share, rate, review the podcast. It really does mean more than you realise.
It's like there's one script, and so I can't have an experience without trying to make it positive. That's just not how my brain works. And so I started writing a blog called Not the Blueprint, and that was all about just not fitting in, because I didn't fit in now, because it wasn't like I was desperate for children and I couldn't have them, which was definitely one camp. It wasn't like I was desperate for children and I'd had them. That was another camp. Or I never wanted them, never even tried. I didn't fit in that camp either. I just seemed to sort of fall between the cracks of never really wanted it, did it to try and save a marriage, didn't work out, and lost everything. When we found out we'd lost whatever was there. But it had taken us 2 years to get 7 weeks pregnant, and some people were really dismissive. So when I've told people, sometimes I'm like, oh, well, you're only 7 weeks, oh. Like they were going to feel sorry for me, and then now they don't. And it's like, it's enormous to go through something like that. It's one of the most awful days of my entire life, for sure. So there was definitely some dark days in that time where I just did not know what life was going to look like now. Like who was I without him and without our relationship, and moving houses and changing jobs and constantly trying to find the thing that was going to make me feel like I was myself again. And that was really tough. I think it's unrealistic to expect to just be kind of at one level the whole time. Life is ups and downs, and there are times when I can talk about my journey like now and I can be fine, and there's other times where I'll just burst into tears over it. There's a lot to keep processing, and it's a big thing that happened. But I now know the tools that help me, the people that help me, the things that will bring me joy and bring me happiness. And I just really believe that we're here for a good time, not a long time. And so you have to do whatever you've got to do to try and make the time that you do have as precious as possible. That was really important, the fact that we do have a mix of ages. Like we're predominantly between 35 and 50, I'd say, but we do have people either side, and I love that as well. I love people and their stories, and I think we can all learn from each other. I just felt that it was the right thing to do, and so I started it, and then I've learned, and I keep learning, and I keep trying, and I keep changing things, and I'm not afraid. Because the worst thing that could have ever happened has already happened. A lot like losing my dad, going through the miscarriage and the divorce. It'd be quite hard to top those things, and so I feel slightly invincible in that regard, because I know that I'm always going to be highly employable. I know that I'm a good person, and I know that I'm only trying to do a good thing. Get it? It's human to go through that, and I think that's the other thing I always want to really promote. We're so good at trying to sort of paper over human emotions, but it's normal to fail, it's normal to be scared, it's normal to be vulnerable, it's normal that everything doesn't go right every time. They're normal things, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about them.
I believe every business owner has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talks podcast, powered by Picture Book Films. Okay, welcome to another episode of the County Business Talks podcast. My guest on the podcast this week is a qualified coach, networking champion and a social concierge who is passionate about connecting people through supporting local businesses to create lasting personal and professional relationships right here in Brighton and Hove. I've had the pleasure of attending her events and getting to know her over the past couple of years, and I'm delighted to welcome the person that is truly connecting Brighton. The wonderful Lyndsey Clay. Welcome to the podcast.
What an introduction.
How are you?
Sam. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Great to have you on.
I know.
I've been very excited about this.
I'm having like a total fangirl moment, because it's just very exciting to be here with you, having obviously watched so many and doing a sterling job on them, may I say.
You are too kind. Well, look, we're going to delve straight in as always. So let's just tell the listeners a little bit about you and your story.
I think that is such a big question. Like, where do you start in your story? But I suppose the big things for me is that I'm a Brighton girl, born and bred. So I always talk about how my grandparents met in Hove, and they had 5 kids, and my dad lured my mum from Essex and worked at the Brighton Council his whole life. And then, we've always lived in Brighton. I love travel, but I'll always come back here. Yeah. I just think there's nowhere quite like Brighton. And I started my corporate career in ice and frozen foods, actually.
Nice,
I was a chilled supervisor on London Road. And there is nowhere that will teach you better how to be around people than ice and London Road, for those local Brighton people who know the horrors of London Road. But I had a really interesting childhood. So we were a foster family growing up. which is another reason why I'm so personable, why I love being around people, why I love people's stories, and why I do what I do with my business, because I've always been in an environment where people have needed to be around people and to be good with people. So although that was quite a hard part of growing up, it's also given me such amazing personal skills that I'm really grateful for.
Amazing.
And so going from that into then London Road, you know, those two things combined, you can't help but be good with people, coming from that kind of a background. And then I've always been in corporate, so typical Brighton places like Bupa International, which I really love working for, pensions regulator, done tons of travel, as I mentioned, and having a lovely time until really I went through a divorce and the pandemic, and that's really shifted things around for me, which started my own business, Connected Brighton.
Which will, I mean, an amazing concept and great. I want to talk. So I want to obviously talk a little bit about your divorce, because I think the story that we're going to allude to is what led you to obviously then kick off Connected Brighton. So in your early 30s, your life took a little bit of a change. Failed rounds of IVF and miscarriages, and obviously then your marriage sort of broke down. And I know you talked openly about obviously like about Plan B, but just talk to me a little bit about your mindset then around that sort of period in your life, and how I guess that sort of took shape.
So it's really interesting looking back on it. I think when you're going through something truly awful, you don't necessarily realise you're going through something truly awful because you're so in it, you're really head down. It's almost like with the pandemic, you know, when you look back now and you can't believe that we were locked down or nothing was open. You're like, that's complete madness. But at the time, you just got on with it and you just adapted. Yeah. And there's that point where you're in your late 20s. So life is very formulaic. I always talk about, you know, sort of like the social blueprint. And, you know, you meet boy meets girl meets boy, you get together, you get married, you have children. And there just seemed to be this constant narrative that I tried to follow as well with my friends, where, you know, we all met someone, all talked about getting married, all talked about having kids. And then just turned out that I couldn't have children, and I'd never actually really wanted children, so I found myself in this sort of very strange position of like wanting to give my husband children wasn't really high up on my agenda, but there was so much social pressure to do it, and it was all our conversations were based around in like our kind of late 20s, early 30s, and I know everybody kind of resonates with it. But then sort of being part of that, and then sort of thinking, okay, I'd always really loved my career and was really ambitious, but I'm going to have to have a baby. That's how this is going to work. And so put my energy into it, and then it didn't work. And then everybody around me was having children, and literally it felt like it was, if people had been together 10 minutes or 10 years, they were having babies, and they'd pull me off to tell me separately, because I was the only one that wasn't getting pregnant. And eventually we went through IVF. And I kind of really like pushed us through that road, because by that point I could see all the cracks forming in my marriage, which to me felt like the only fixable way to do that was to prove that we could have a child. And the IVF didn't work, and it's an incredible process. I mean, but again, I felt like a fraud in it because I didn't really want kids, and I felt like I'd taken someone else's golden ticket sitting in the IVF room. And you're a bit of a pincushion. It's very personal. Yeah, I feel for the guys in the process because it's very different for them. But to be a woman in that process, it just felt like I felt like a human science experiment, and it wasn't very enjoyable. And then obviously we went through the miscarriage, and it was a missed miscarriage, so my body hadn't really caught up, and we'd gone with the excitement of thinking that actually we were having a scan to see we'd had 2 eggs that had taken. So we were looking to see if they were both still there or not, and then it turned out that there was nothing there. And it felt like this very, very public failure, because everybody knew that we had got pregnant, that we were going for our scan that day, and then to sort of be told by the nurse that it might not feel like it, but actually this was good news, because I did a pregnancy test and it was basically came out negative there and then, like practically in the room. Because otherwise it meant that it was an ectopic pregnancy, and I would have to have gone to hospital. So it was really hard to sort of be told that was good news, because it didn't feel like good news. And our consultant kind of high-fived us for even getting pregnant, because it's quite hard on the IVF process to get pregnant. So that also felt very strange to us. But it just put scars in and cuts into our marriage that we just couldn't recover from. And we did one more round. Same thing happened, although we didn't get as far as the scan that time. And we grieved in very different ways, as people do. So unfortunately we weren't the first, and we won't be the last victim of fertility divorce, unfortunately.
So thank you for sharing. I obviously I sort of I've been through that process and with IVF and also with miscarriage, we did have an ectopic pregnancy as well, and all those type of and it is this that journey itself is, you know, it's such an emotional roller coaster, isn't it? And I sort of listen, I'm speaking to Kelly about it as well, and a similar type of thing, like friends getting pregnant. Like I said, it seems everywhere you look, someone around you is getting pregnant, and it really hits home then that's. But what's interesting, I guess, like you said, like for you, deep down, maybe not actually thinking that is actually the path I want. It's so strange, isn't it? The narrative out there about how we should live our lives and what boxes we should fit in is so. It's, you know, we just have a preconception. Well, that's what we should do, and that's what, you know, and this. You know, through what the process that you've gone through, then to actually come out of it and go, well, you know, there is another.
Yeah, there's another way. And it was funny because when we were still together, but it hadn't worked, and we thought we were going to stay together at that point, and we would talk to friends about it. Some people who had kids were like, "Oh wow, like you're so lucky. You're never going to have kids. Like you're always going to be." Someone said to us, "You'll always be the star of your movie." Yeah. Whereas now, like, we're co-stars now. Like, nothing's about us.
That's a really good name.
Yeah. So we did have quite a few people who were looking at us sort of like quite wistfully, like, "Oh God, you're going to have the best life ever. Like, don't feel that you've missed out on anything. Like, you're going to have a great time." But unfortunately, like, we didn't really survive it. But I had that whole thing of like the social pressure, and then when you don't have children, people just don't know what to do with you. So I just felt like my friends didn't invite me out with their kids because obviously I didn't have a kid. Yeah. I think they didn't want to make me feel awkward. I think they had sort of like, you know, survivor's guilt that they did have them. And I think with all the best will in the world, my friends were trying to make me feel better, but it didn't make me feel better not being invited to things with couples anymore, not getting them to invite things with kids anymore. Obviously, they were all like tired mums as well, so they didn't have a lot of time. It really shifted my whole social circle. Yeah, sure. And I think especially as a woman, when you don't have children, people assume that maybe you're not maternal. Yeah. And like I think kids are hilarious. Like I definitely don't want one, and I'm glad I don't have them. Yeah. But I think they're really funny, and I love seeing little mini versions of my mates. I think that's hilarious. But so you get all of these labels popped on you, or it feels like you get labels put on you, and it's made everything very difficult for me in terms of like dating. You know, I don't want to date people with children. I can't have children if someone's looking to have children. It's quite rare to find other people that are similar in not having kids. Yeah,
I think listening to that, I think, and doing the podcast and speaking to people, ultimately, the one thing that I've taken from it so much is that whatever we're doing in life, whatever we're trying to achieve, or whatever we're not trying, whatever that journey looks like, it's all, ultimately, when we're looking at it, all we want to do is live a life true to ourselves. And there's so many external factors, social media, social groups, everything, and labels that people point at, that how many people out there actually are not living a life potentially true to themselves because they're following those external factors.
100%. I really, like, my only regret is that I didn't stick to it. So remember when I met my husband, I said to him, I don't want children. If you want children, I'm probably not the right person for you. And he was like, no, I'd rather have you than have kids. And then we just both got swept up in the sort of societal norms. Remember my cousin in Australia, she's a bit older, and before we got married, she was like, what are you, the housekeeper? When are you getting married? And so we got married, and then as soon as we got married, she's like, when are you having a baby? And it was like, oh my God. And then and for friends that have had one, then people are like, when are you having another one? It's like there's one script. And so, you know, I can't have an experience without trying to make it positive. That's just not how my brain works. And so I started writing a blog called Not the Blueprint. And that was all about just not fitting in, because I didn't fit in now. Because it wasn't like I was desperate for children and I couldn't have them, which was definitely one camp. It wasn't like I was desperate for children and I'd had them. That was another camp. Or I never wanted them, never even tried. I didn't fit in that camp either. I just seemed to sort of fall between the cracks of never really wanted it, did it to try and save a marriage, didn't work out, and lost everything. What camp is that? That's like Camp Clay, and I'm on my own. But again, sort of similar to how I felt when I started Connected Brighton, I just thought, I can't be the only person that this has happened to, because the law of averages, it's highly unlikely that I'm the only one. And I remember writing my blog for the first time on Instagram, and I just kind of woke up, like the name came to me, Not the Blueprint. I found that handle was free, and I just wrote this post about feeling like my hand had just broke through the rubble, like I'd survived this, and I can tell my story and I can share what's happened. And It's hard, and all of this is hard, but if you resonate with this and you need to hear it, then I'm here to tell it. And Not the Blueprint really changed everything for me. It was a massive part of my journey to being true to myself, because I kind of openly grieved on there. Because when you do IVF, as you well know, we got offered one counselling session after going through all of that trauma. You know, we were only 7 weeks pregnant when we found out we'd lost whatever was there. But it had taken us 2 years to get 7 weeks pregnant, and some people were really dismissive. So when I've told people, sometimes I'm like, oh, you were only 7 weeks. You're only 7 weeks. Oh, like they were going to feel sorry for me, and now they don't. And it's like it's still enormous to go through something like that. It's one of the most awful days of my entire life, for sure. But suddenly found all of these people on Instagram that were writing about fertility and infertility and miscarriage and divorce, and I didn't realise these existed. So I felt really passionate that I needed to add my voice and my story into that mix, because it was so different to the others of, you know, those that were kind of living on their heads and having wheatgrass shots every 10 minutes to try and get pregnant, or they just remortgaged their house again, or there wasn't anybody quite like me. And I had a really good following on there, and really interesting reaction from like men and women who did or didn't want children and were with partners who felt opposite, or single people who just really wanted kids and wouldn't even know if they could have them or not because they're not even getting the chance. And this whole infertility world opened up to me that I had no clue was so big.
Wow.
But again, in that terms of not fitting in, I remember going to a bloggers event for the fertility bloggers, which I was one, and all of those women in there either wanted to get pregnant or had got pregnant through IVF. And it was very interesting to see the dynamics between those that had been successful and those that hadn't been successful. And they were all looking at me like with pure fear, because I represented everything that they did not want to be, which was really happy without children and single. Whereas they wanted to be married and with kids. And that's all that they could ever focus on. And there was me as this kind of shiny unicorn, like, it's okay, everybody. If it doesn't work out, life can still be really cool. And so I just felt, and I went through this journey. I went travelling. After my divorce, I went away for 6 months, and I always joke about how it's like the Julia Roberts film Eat, Love, Pray. But mine was Snack, Nap, Hope. And I spent time in America and Australia and Canada, and I just really found myself so I could be truer to myself. And I wrote Not the Blueprint in that time, and I had very, very personal posts when it was really hard, or when I was having real epiphanies about what a great opportunity this was, or whatever I was feeling, I was sharing it. And it was so cathartic for me. It was just sort of my form of therapy to just be able to get it out. Like, I'd lost my best friend, I'd lost the chance of ever having a family, even though it wasn't something that I'd wanted. It was now definitely never going to happen. And I felt like someone had just wiped 10 years off my life, because I can't remember all the stories and things that we did, and we have no contact. And so I'd lost my future as well as today, and I can't remember the past. So it was just the strangest time to go through, but I felt so passionate that I had to talk about it and be open and be vulnerable and be authentic, and I had a really, really great response to that. I did get a bit it felt quite hard at one point to sort of be the poster girl for infertility, miscarriage and divorce, because, you know, you're taking on a lot of energy for people and emotions, and to keep it being positive, and there is another way out there, and not everything has to be around children, and there's all sorts of ways that you can have children in your life if that's what you want, but if you don't want them, that's okay too. You know, it doesn't make you a bad person or less paternal or maternal to not want children. It's just not for everybody.
And I think that's it, that people just actually accepting that, just saying that narrative out there isn't for me, and I'm okay with that. And I think it's probably, listening to you talk, it's probably more about other people being uncomfortable with the conversation, because this is what life should be. This is what everyone should be doing there. And you're going, well, actually, no, I've not done that. I've done X. And like you said, being really happy about it. I think, because obviously I've known you for a while now, and just listening to you talk now, you're optimistic, you're a positive person, that positive energy that I get from you, that to come out of that situation and have that optimistic, positive outlook on life is a great way to be, and not, whereas other people maybe not, they get swallowed up in that sort of scenario. And
it would have been very easy to. So there was definitely some dark days in that time where
of course,
I just did not know what life was going to look like now. Like, who was I without him and without our relationship, and moving houses and changing jobs and constantly trying to find the thing that was going to make me feel like I was myself again. And that was really tough, really, really tough. And I didn't have any map to follow. I was just like some kind of was a crane fly, like a human crane fly. I was just bouncing off everything, something will stick. I'll work it out. It will kind of all come together. But just keeping trying to keep healthy and exercise and talk about it. From growing up in that foster environment, one thing was you had to always talk about your feelings. So we'd have social workers, and my parents divorced when I was 10, and we did a lot of family therapy then as well. So I'm so used to having to talk about my emotions that I have to talk it out, which is another reason why Not the Blueprint felt comfortable to me. There's lots of people who've said to me, I can't believe that you've been so open and you've been so vulnerable, but that's the only way I know how to be. And I think we've lost that ability of storytelling if we don't do that, because you're not teaching other people that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be different if you don't talk about it.
I love that, and I think you're so right. There's such a powerful message within storytelling that we can do, and especially when it comes to vulnerability. And I think I've certainly seen a little bit of a shift. I don't know if you tell me, but throughout lockdown, people were forced to be a little bit more vulnerable and forced to be a little bit more open about situations, because especially related to business, for example, we couldn't go online and go, my business is doing great, because at most businesses were doing a bit shit. And do you think you've seen a little bit of a change in people being a bit more open, whether it be online or in person at events and stuff? Or
I definitely feel, because of Not the Blueprint being a massive part of why Connected Brighton came along, and that sort of disconnect to my friends and needing a tribe that understood me. I think I didn't originally see that there was going to be a link between the two brands, and my original intention was that it would have nothing to do with that story. And then I realised if people were going to come out with me, they really needed to know who I was and why was I doing this in the first place. And now I have a lot of people, men and women, that come who've ended up in the same position as me, and they'll share their stories with me. So I definitely think if you're open, people will be open back. And I agree. I think what the pandemic did in enabling people to be more authentic and vulnerable was we were all in the same, that we're in the same storm but different boats. So you felt more comfortable to talk about what condition your boat was in, because you knew that you understood the storm. And so it gave us this platform that we could all understand, and nobody was thriving at that point. So like you said, if you'd have been like, I'm having a lovely time, people would have been like, well, you're a bit strange. I did actually love lockdown. Obviously it had its moments, and I had just had a breakup and had to do a lot of healing during that time, and so that was definitely tough, but I'm grateful I had the time and space to do it. But I called it my Lindsay loving, because I was just working. I didn't have my business at that point. Connected Brighton was just a twinkle in my eye at that stage. So I had my big corporate job, so I just exercised. I had no interest in doing house party or pub quizzes or anything. My inner hermit totally took root, and we had a lovely time.
Amazing.
Just having no FOMO or no phobo. It was great. But having much better conversations with everybody, because we were all being a bit more honest about it, because we were all feeling a little bit uncertain and a bit bruised and a bit not sure what was going to happen next, but just trying to make the best of. Luckily I was around people that were making the best of it, as opposed to people that went down the other side. And it's like you asked me that question earlier about being positive, but because for me the alternative is just never an option. And I've always been lucky enough that there's definitely been points where I've felt myself on the brink of a depression. And I remember sort of in those dark days after the divorce, we did a course at the pensions regulator, and it was about stress and anxiety and spotting it in your colleagues, and they put up a PowerPoint of all the things that you should look out for, and I was like, tick 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 tick. Okay, that's not very good. And then a woman who was in the group, one of my friends, took me for a drink afterwards, and she was like, I think you might be depressed. And I was like, I think you're right. But it took someone to just say it to me, that I just felt like her saying that just made me really pull myself out and be like, right, I need to pull in all the tools and resources around me that are going to get me in a better place.
Because I'm interested with that side, because as similar to you, I guess, ultimately people would, I guess, describe me as a positive person and an optimist, similar to you, do that. But do you feel that, I don't know how to describe it, do you feel at that time you felt with the depression side of stuff that I can't allow myself to be that person, I'm not down or feeling low or for whatever, and you had obviously every reason to feel like that because of the situation you've been in, but not allowing yourself. This is the person I am, so I can't allow myself to be that person. Did you feel that?
Yeah, definitely, because that's not who I am. But you tend to find that a lot of people that do have mental health is that the frustration is that they know that's not who they are. That you wake up in the morning and you're like, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't how I want to feel. But it's completely out of your control. And I've never been in that far down that road. I've always been able to, reach out, do something about it, ask for help. Yeah. And it's a cycle. I think it's unrealistic to expect to just be kind of at one level the whole time. Life is ups and downs, and there are times when I can talk about my journey like now and I can be fine, and there's other times where I'll just burst into tears over it. There's a lot to keep processing, and it's a big thing that happened. But I now know the tools that help me, the people that help me, the things that will bring me joy and bring me happiness. And I just really believe that we're here for a good time, not a long time. And so you have to do whatever you've got to do to try and make the time that you do have as precious as possible. Like, my dad had a heart attack when I was 21, and I feel like I've had a must make the most of life complex ever since then, because he had so much he wanted to do and to live for, and he'd only just retired, at 15, so he'd only had like 2 years of living kind of work free, although he was working because we're clays, we can't help ourselves. But I just felt you never know, know. And so I've always managed to try and make the most out of every situation. And even like when he passed away, I was trying to find the positives of, like, we didn't know he was sick, he didn't know he was sick, he went quickly, it wasn't painful, and just something positive. Like, there has to be something positive.
Love that. And I do, like I say, I guess I'll buy into it, because I am the same. I always look at the situation, guys, it's got to be a positive side to that, and and look at that. I mean, talk to me then about, I guess, talk to me about starting a business. Never a right time to start a business, but talk to me about Connected Brighton and the reason for starting a social events business during the global pandemic.
Yeah, I always like to joke that the title of my best-selling book that will make me a millionaire is how I started a social events company in a socially distanced pandemic and became a millionaire. So
love that. I'll buy that book.
I always say, like, I'm nothing if not resilient. But the idea came to me over lockdown. So I had, at that point, all my social circle had shifted again, because obviously all my friends that had kids, they don't live near us, and obviously you couldn't travel. You weren't allowed to see people. The people that I were hanging out with were single, and as we were kind of going through that really dark, like, winter, it was awful, wasn't it? All those people that were single were kind of coupling up, and I was thinking, this pandemic is going to end, and I'm not going to have anyone to go out with, because families have hunkered down now, couples are together. What am I going to do? And so I spoke to friends that had moved to the city over the last couple of years, and talked about maybe doing like a diners club. So I wanted to put money back in the city. I'd watched some of my really favourite hospitality brands just like struggle and pivot in every direction to just keep going, and really wanted to do something that would put money back into the city again, and especially into those independent brands. I thought, just like a dating diners club, and we'll go to all the really nice private function rooms, like Coal Shed and all that kind of thing. And then just couldn't get it out of my head that this was something that I should do, and that there was a market for it. Like, the more I talked about it to different people, they said that's exactly the sort of thing they would have loved to have seen. And because the pandemic kept everybody apart, actually I was, starting a business at the worst possible time turned out to be the best possible time for me, because the need was there for connection, for people to be together. So many people moved to Brighton during the pandemic who couldn't make friends because you couldn't obviously physically be close to people. So I remember the first event we did was just a picnic in the park, just to see who would come, really. And there was couples that turned up, and I was very confused by this, because I just assumed it would be single people. Not to, date or matchmaker or anything like that, but at the time I thought just to make friends with other single people and, make new networks. But the couples that came had similar, so they were new to the city, didn't have friends yet, wanted to make friends. By that point, I'd been doing my newsletter for about a month, talking about like what was open, what Brighton was like. Started my Instagram and was building a following, and they really liked what I was doing and wanted to come and say hi.
I love that.
So now it's become a people's club. It's not a singles club, it's a people's club. We have different events if you are single and you're looking to date, but the majority of it just making friends.
Brilliant.
But it does make me laugh. I've got, as a coach, I help other entrepreneurs now. So I've only been an entrepreneur for just over a year, but I do gifted coaching at the BIPC at the library to help others with what I've learnt so far.
Amazing.
And especially over well-being, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And I know I kind of go through my cycles and recognise the triggers now and pull myself back again. Think, okay, just need to make a plan. Need to sit down and we'll be fine. And just talking other, entrepreneurs through that journey so quickly. But I just, again, it's that storytelling for me. If I've got something to share that I think will help you, so I'm happy to. I want to share it.
Love that. And I guess that ultimately, definitely from the connection side of things, and I've noticed it a lot over the whole, coming out of the pandemic. So many people just crave that, being around other people, and that, within that networking scene that we're both part of, and we go out and meet people, just crave that human connection that, was just taken away from us. That you think, I've been to the best of British events and 500 people in the grand, and at one point during lockdown, think, are we ever going to be back to that point where we're having emotional almost it is when you are in those positions where you sort of are surrounded by great people, and it's such an amazing thing. I love the idea of, like you said, I've been a fan of obviously what you've achieved with Connected Brighton, but also the name behind it, and just the ethos about just bringing people together and just giving people that opportunity to connect.
And it's bringing people, like-minded people together, and to support independent, and to make sure that Brighton stays boutique and unique. It's been a really hard time, and you see a lot of the sites that have become free in the town centre are now taken over by chains. Some of those chains I love when I'm in London, but I don't really want them in Brighton. But I appreciate there has to be a mix, and that's really important. And to the point about connection and making friends is, my events are maximum of 12 people for the majority, unless it's parties, and that's so that people do have a chance to really talk to each other, see each other. I always joke you can't sneak into one of my events, because I give everybody a big hug when they get there. I introduce them to people, and I give them a big hug when they leave. And I see the friendships form, and sometimes I get added onto WhatsApp groups. I think people feel like they're cheating on me if they're going to do something without me. But I love seeing those friendships, those relationships. People have given each other work, and it's just wonderful watching this community that really does support each other. And I've made lovely new friends through it as well, which has been great. There's only positives that's come from it for me, and I've been so grateful that all the people that have come have been attracted, because we do bespoke experiences. They're curated and they're locally led. It feels different. It's a premium experience that you're getting. Obviously, I'm there to personally host it for you every time, and we've got my lovely intern Lois that helps me out as well. So it isn't like going to a meetup where you just go in a pub. That's not the experience I wanted you to have. And because I love hospitality, being the other side of it, I've always loved hospitality and good experiences, and I wanted to give that back to other people, because when you're coming to this, you do feel vulnerable. Lots of the time, 99% you're coming on your own, and it's a big deal, because there's a reason why you need connection. There's a reason why you haven't got a friendship group around you that are fulfilling your needs, and you're looking for something that will fulfill your needs. So I know a lot of people watch me for quite a long time before they'll come out, because they just want to double check who's in all the pictures. That's what drive everybody mad, taking tons of photos. I'm like, representation matters. People need to see that it's mixed gender, which was really important to me. Like my best mates are males, and I've got so much out of that mixed gender friendship that I wanted to make sure that my group was mixed. I think the only women events are very well catered for, but I don't think mixed genders are, in my view. And so that was really important, the fact that we do have a mix of ages. Like, we're predominantly between 35 and 50, I'd say, but we do have people either side, and I love that as well. I love people and their stories, and I think we can all learn from each other. If I just had little carbon copies of the same person coming, that would be awful. They're like-minded, but they've got different backgrounds, and they've got a different reason for being here, and some of those reasons I could never have predicted. I just thought it would be single people, but we've got couples, we've got widows that come, we've got people who have got children and they've grown up and they're feeling a bit bereft now, and they're just starting to go through a breakup, or people who never had kids. And when your life doesn't keep pace with your peers, which has been my experience, it can be really difficult. Although, like, I love my life, maybe, it feels really isolating. It can feel really isolating, and I really hate the word lonely, but there are times where I can feel very much on my own, because people are busy, they've got their families, or they're in their couples and they're doing their thing, and you don't always reach out when you should. But creating this community where people know that they can rely on each other means an awful lot to me.
That's amazing. I want to touch on, obviously you mentioned the word resilience as well. I want to talk a little bit about launching Connected Brighton, what that's looked like, you know, growing a business and starting a business through that pandemic, but maybe some of the lessons that you've learned from your personal experiences that we've obviously touched on. What have you taken from that into the business world as well? Because there must be a lot of similarities there. No?
Yeah, because I think I'm just more, because I'm now being true to myself. So actually with Connected, I didn't know I necessarily had this in me. I don't think it's been a surprise to anybody that knows me. But for me, I've been like, ooh, didn't know I could do this. And the skills that I've learned along the way, but what my experience previously, I've just feel more resilient now. And actually it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter either way. If it's brilliant or if it has to fold tomorrow. It doesn't matter, because the world will still keep turning. There'll still be stuff to do. I'll still have a lovely time whatever I'm going to do next. And obviously my plan is for complete world domination with it. That's where I'm heading.
Of course.
But I just being brave enough to try and to not just sit there and wonder what it would have been like what if, you know, what if I don't start this business? Then how would that feel to me? And it's all those coaching questions. You know, mentioned I'm a qualified coach, and you know, part of becoming a coach was to help other people. You know, originally that was people that had also gone through a trauma and who needed to find their plan B happiness. And now that sort of turns out that plan B for me was B for business. And I never foresaw that until I started a business.
So there was never like from a younger age, there was never a point for you 20 or whenever that you thought, because you was in obviously the corporate world, but there was never a thought process of going, even prior to all of this, that you thought, I'm going to start my own business one day. There was never that side of you? Or
Never. I just thought it was going to be a corporate whore forever. That was really where I thought I was heading. You know, I was chief of staff at Centrica, and that's obviously a very elite career, and head of department for a regulator. So I just envisioned that my life would kind of carry on that way, and eventually get to directors and carry on that. But I never for a minute thought I would run my own business. But the way that Not the Blueprint and Connected both came along was that I couldn't keep them in. You know, it had to come out and I've just had to like run with it. So I feel the way that Connected has organically grown into new ways and means that I never planned for in the beginning, because I just felt that it was the right thing to do. And so I started it, and then I've learned, and I keep learning, and I keep trying, and I keep changing things, and I'm not afraid, because you know the worst thing that could have ever happened has already happened. You know, a lot like losing my dad, going through the miscarriage and the divorce. You know, it'd be quite hard to top those things, and so I feel slightly invincible in that regard, because I know that I'm always going to be highly employable. I know that I'm a good person, and I know that I'm only trying to do a good thing, and that just stands me in good stead. So I've changed our look and feel on our social media. Like I'd never change the name, very wedded to the name. But you know, I'm not afraid to sort of try an event out that does or doesn't work, because sometimes it takes me by surprise if it does or it doesn't work, because I was expecting the opposite. But I'll always give everything a try now. It's all a test, because if you don't try, then like the alternative, it's a bit like we were talking about, that you know, you can go down that deep dark hole, or you can try and pull yourself out. It's like that's not an option for me.
It's such a powerful message as well, isn't it? I love that thought process of like, because I'm similar in that sense that I'd much rather try something and I've failed. I've talked openly about it many times, and I've failed many times. But I'd rather try it and it not work out, and I go, but rather than sit there and having this conversation where you go, but I wonder what if I just tried that time. I wonder what if, and we're sitting here talking now, having this chat about you starting Connected Brighton, and not, and because you did go, I'm going to start this. I'm not. What if? We're not sitting here going, but I had this really good idea a couple of years ago, and I never started that.
And I never did it. And I think as well, it's that I felt so judged in my life for various things, and especially when things didn't work out and you don't fit in, and you just feel that societal judgment on you. And although that's really hard, it's also kind of freeing, because you just realise you're going to be judged whatever you do. So, and you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And don't get me wrong, I like to be liked, but I've also just learnt to accept that, you know, that's just part and parcel of it. And I've got to do what I feel is right for me, and now I have to do what I feel is right for my community. You know, Connected Brighton is a living being, and you know, I was joking with you before we got on the air about she's alive now. So whatever way this goes, whether, you know, we have an awful winter and we have to reduce right down, or actually people want to come back out again because they desperately need the connection, like I will just bend and flex in whatever way I can to provide this service to this community, because I know that they appreciate it, they need it. I see the positive impact it has, and it's here now, and I'm going to keep it going in whatever guise, in whichever shape and form and size I can.
Love it. So, but it strikes me then that your relationship with failure, I guess, is that you don't fear it at all. For example, the way you're sort of talking about, and it will go on to world domination, I'm quite sure. But for example, you go a couple of years and it doesn't work out, it does come back, and it, for whatever reason that closes. I get the impression from you, one, you'll just go and start something else, you'll start a new business, whatever that is, but it's that belief that you don't fear failure. Would that be right?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, I think I've got like a healthy fear of it, in that I don't want that to happen.
Yeah,
but also there's mini failures all the time within it. You know, when something doesn't work out, or if someone cancelled their membership, or if, you know, I'm trying to pin someone down to being a sponsor and haven't been able to pin them down. You know, there's little bits where I feel I could do it better, or what went wrong there, but I just feel very open that it's the process, and just to be open to all outcomes and the opportunities that will come from it. So, you know, I never dreamt that I would, you know, that we'd have the Connected Brighton podcast, for example. That was just me and Ben joking when we were drunk in lockdown, before Connected was even an idea that we should do a podcast. We thought were very funny, and and now I love our podcast so much, and I love coming on other people's podcasts, and there's loads of this that I just did not foresee, and so I just feel very open to the journey, because I don't know where it will take me next. Like, I'm doing some PR work for one of our sponsors at the moment. Didn't see myself as a PR person because I didn't know anything about PR, but it turns out it's all the skill set that I have. So I've learnt that along the way. You know, I talk about being green but keen, because there's just so much I don't know and that I need to learn and I want to learn. But I want to learn it, and then I want to be able to pass it on and help other people do it as well. There's so much in this world, and I feel so lucky because I've got one foot in the hospitality industry, and I can kind of walk into any of the bars and restaurants we work with, and I feel like I'm part of the team. And then I have the business networking scene that we're on together, where I've made such amazing friends and mentors and supporters, and it's blown me away in both pools just how supportive everybody's been of the concept. And when I have those moments of like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And then I'll bump into someone, or someone will stop me in the street and say how much they love the business or they love the concept. And Adele. Everyone thought it was like the real Adele. It's so funny. A lovely lady called Adele, not the real Adele. But she stopped me in the street, and just to tell me how she gets my newsletter, and she loves it, and she's going to come out with me soon, and she just loved the whole concept of Connected and how different it was, and wanted to support me. And today, coming here, got an Uber here, and my Uber driver was like, "What do you do?" And so I was like, "Oh, I'm a social concierge," and I was telling him about it. And by the end of the journey, he was like, "I think you're going to be a multimillionaire. I think this is an absolute brilliant idea. I think you're going to smash it." And so I got out of the car with just a big smile on my face. Like, this business is amazing, and I'm really, really, really proud of it. Just for having the tenacity and the resilience to do it. Like I said, I didn't know I had it in me, and now I do know, and I will continue to grow that muscle of skills that I've got now, that I didn't necessarily appreciate how powerful that they were. But I'm so excited for what's going to happen next. Like, it's scary AF at the moment, not going to lie, with you know, the change in weather, the economy, rising cost of living, new government, no longer our queen. There's so much for people to go through. There's so much grief, and I see that grief when there's bad news on the telly. You know, definitely traffic slows down to our website for a few days, and then people go through their grief cycle and they come back out and they're like, actually, I need to be around people, and then they come back out again. And I get it, like, you know, it's human to go through that. And I think that's the other thing I always want to really promote. Of we're so good at trying to sort of paper over human emotions, but it's normal to fail. It's normal to be scared. It's normal to be vulnerable. It's normal that everything doesn't go right every time. They're normal things, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about them.
And again, just that narrative alone is such a powerful one. And I agree with you totally. I think there's still for me, there's still that stigma attached to vulnerability still being seen as weakness. There's still stuff on social media we're all guilty of doing, putting our highlight reels out there and stuff like that, whereas people like you that are promoting honesty and openness, that you can go, you know what, things are a bit shit sometimes and this is what happens, but there is a positive outcome, there is other ways to look at it, just to give another option. I guess that's the brilliant thing about your whole story and your journey as a whole, is that there was this blueprint that should have been happening and that didn't, and you've taken a positive outcome out of that and created something else which is pretty special. And you can tell how passionate I are every time I talk to you about it, that passion and positivity around it, and that just exudes from you, do you know what I mean? And I think it's and that's why people will buy into it as well, because of buy into you and the concept and
yeah, definitely. And it's been very validating for me, because I have found so many other people who've shared their stories that are very similar, and actually sure. You're never the only one, although you can feel like you're the only one. And I always, talked about it before in terms of, there's one set of emotions, there's a Dulux colour list, and, they're all different emotions. You don't have a special emotion that none of us have ever felt before. Yeah. But what brings us together is that, you know what joy feels like and I know what joy feels like, but what makes us different is how we got there. Yeah. And that's why sharing those stories of, your grief and your joy and your success and your failure is so important, because it will resonate and it will inspire and it will motivate others. Yeah. And you've been very open about your journey as well, and talking about and all the different hats that you need to wear, and all the stuff that you do for Rocking Horse and for your family. And that's again what people resonate. People buy people.
Buy it, definitely. Well, a good friend of ours, obviously, Inside Stories, the guys at Inside Stories, who we both obviously work with, the Social Concierge, and obviously with us, but that one of the main things that come out of our narrative was exactly that: people buy people. And I think that's such a strong, powerful, whatever business you're in, whatever industry, what life in general, that is it, isn't it? People buy from people. I think that's
100%. And it, I think again of that sort of green but keen. I never planned to put my face anywhere near Connected. So in the beginning, my social media was just going to be, my neon text, and then beautiful pictures of Brighton and food and drink, and that was all it was ever going to be. And now my face is plastered all over it, because
you are
actually
connected.
It's my baby. But also, people need to know who I am. They're coming out to spend time with me. Yeah. They need to think, well, actually I can get along with her, or she's got something to say that I want to listen to, or she looks like fun. I need to show myself, and people have come and they've been so honest and about that, and I love going out with my group. I get very excited. I see people's names pop up on my guest list, and whenever it's one of our members, I love seeing my members again. I feel like I'm organising my mates' diaries. That's what it feels like now. And then when it's someone new, I get really excited, because I'm like, oh, we've attracted someone else. This is great fun. And so, it just really pleases me. I feel very, very lucky, and I'm very, very, very grateful that I had the opportunity and the idea, and that I had the impetus to go with it, and that I was brave and bold enough to do it.
And I'm interested, because like listening to you talk about it, and you can tell the excitement, and like you said, it's actually accepting these at sort of early stages of the enjoyment and the fun around creating a business and running a business. Because look, there's challenges that come with it as well, isn't there? And there's some tough times of running a business, like you said, whether it be self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, all of those things that sort of kick in. But actually trying to be present in the moment, and of course we talk about world domination, and going to have Connected all over the world, which will happen, I'm sure. but actually not being too fixated on that, and enjoying the process, where you are right now, and looking back. I mean, talking about that, like looking back just over the period since you started. Talk to me about what's been the highlight of it so far. What's been your proudest moment, I guess, from Connected?
Yeah, it's funny, because I registered as a limited company before I'd even had a single event. So April 2021, I registered as limited. And I remember just sort of feeling like just standing a bit taller, like I had a limited business now, and I had my website, and I had my business account, and that was like a really wonderful start to it. And then there were sort of two standouts. One was the Christmas party. So it's the first time we'd ever had a group over 12, and there was 25 of us at the wine cellar, and I sort of did a little speech, and as soon as I sort of stood up and saw everybody, I felt really emotional that I'd brought all these people together, and I obviously knew every event that they'd been to, and could now see that the friendships were being made, and I loved that. And then we had our first birthday party, which also happens to time with turns out my birthday's in the same week. I managed to tie them together very handily.
Awesome.
And again, we had 50 people come to that.
Wow.
And so just seeing everybody come and like chat and know that they knew that they were in a safe space, that they were going to find somebody that they recognised, members making friends.
Yeah.
It was just wonderful. And again, got to give a speech. My mum and my sister and my niece were there, which was really special for me to have them witness that moment with me.
Yeah.
And I just felt incredibly proud. Had our first 50 members joined within 8 weeks when we launched our membership. There's just been like so many amazing moments in this business, but those are the real sort of standout ones for me. But every day I feel grateful and proud. And we were talking about enjoying the moment, and there are times when I am having that imposter syndrome or when it's like it's tough at the moment, and you're sort of trying to remind yourself actually how far I've come in a really short time, and to not lose sight of the positive impact that it's had on me and on my community and for the people that need it. And there are people that need this business, and so I feel a responsibility to them because I want to provide that for them.
Amazing. And I think it's really taking something out of that. I think something I'm guilty of sometimes, and not actually just being grateful for where you are right at this moment, and like you said, looking at how far you've come and what you've achieved because if you can do that, you appreciate the moment that little bit more, whereas rather than going, I've done that, but I'm going to try and get to there, because that's because you're always moving that milestone, aren't you? You're always going, but I will be. And it's not, I think for me, it's not about putting your happiness on when you get to that point, or putting these points in your life. I'll be happy when I'll get there. It's about being present and being happy right now, which is not always easy when you're right in it and you're struggling.
No, it's not. But I do agree that to what keeps me grounded, because I absolutely want to have connected London, Manchester and Edinburgh in this country. Then I'd love to have connected New York and connected Melbourne, connected Sydney. That makes me super excited. And when I think about just the UK ones, Connected Manchester will come down to visit Connected Brighton, and if someone from Connected Brighton is going to go and visit Manchester, they know they can hang out with the Connected Manchester crew, and we've got our app now, which is really exciting, and so there's so much about it that I cannot wait to be in the position where it's happening. But I also just don't want to lose sight of the moment that I'm in now, while it's still growing and it's still small, and I'm learning so much. And because once I've got franchisees all over the place, life will feel very different again. And it's only me, and so I've kind of, I've burnt myself out several times, over the last 18 months now. And that's part of doing that gifted coaching back to the library, because I've learned how to sort of pull myself back out of that and wanted to help others do it. But also through those sort of burnouts, I've just realised I just physically can't do it by myself right now. What I can do right now, I'm going to do. So controlling the controllables, just do the absolute best job I can, because all the small steps I'm taking now will get me into those big strides. And
so many things I see on social media, some of the other podcasts I listen to and stuff like that, it is actually recognising climbing that Mount Everest has got to start with that small step. And as long as you're taking those small steps, as long as where you are now is a little bit further along than where you were 6 months ago, and then 6 months you're a little bit further, you're moving in the right, you're taking those small steps each time. But
it's just doing something.
And
it's being in the coaching world, you have your big goal where you would like to get to ultimately, and you have 100 tiny goals to get there. And actually it's the destination. It's the journey, not the destination. Because my business has taken me into new places and introduced me to new people that I never saw happening, and now I have very different ideas of what it will look like and how it will make money and what revenue streams we can do, and a true concierge service, and VIP membership and all sorts. But it's being open to everything that you're learning might take you somewhere else. And that's where I feel at the moment of yes, it's definitely interesting times, but there'll be something to learn from this that will help me later on down the line, or I'll end up doing something I didn't predict, but it's going to make me a better person and it will help my community, or there's always going to be something good. Like I said to you, I've got to find the good in everything, and so there will be something good in this.
I love that. And I spoke to a guy I interviewed recently, Chris Goodman, who his fun focus group turns over 125 million. He's done very well financially and blah blah blah. But talking about the starting of a business and the excitement around that, but actually the naivety around actually starting a business and not knowing everything and actually winging it most of the time. And I think what I've accepted and realised that's part of the excitement of it, and everyone. And I'm spitting and talking in front of a guy who's 125 million turnover, and he went, I've just been winging it most of the time, and we all are, aren't we? And I think that's what's so brilliant about being involved in business and starting a business and that whole journey and process, is that actually realising there isn't really a blueprint. That's the same as what you back to life in general, but it's not that blueprint, and it's just about being open to opportunities and what that looks like, and following that path.
And I didn't go to university. So my sister went to university. I didn't go to university, and I didn't go because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want my parents to have a financial burden of me going without it for like a real purpose. That just didn't sit right with me. So I started my illustrious career at Iceland Frozen Foods instead. But I didn't go, and I was really made to feel like it was going to hold me back. You know, it was like, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you've got a degree, that you'll go further in life. But actually, I've had some of the highest roles I'd never dreamed possible, and I got those without a degree. So again, I feel like I've accidentally always been kind of pushing the realms of the blueprint and what's the art of the possible, because ultimately we're all animals, and so I get that's like a very hormonal drive to have children, but we don't all have the same hormones. And it's right that we do things differently. I think in this generation now, in the world we live in at the moment, there seems to be more push for that than ever. You know, the pandemic changed everybody's views on their life, what they wanted to do now. You know, the Great Resignation, so many people have started businesses because they're like, life is too short, and you don't know what's around the corner, and I want to do what pleases me and what's going to bring me joy. And so we're definitely in this very interesting, creative, entrepreneurial time, and again, it's very, really inspiring to me to see. And when I do those coaching sessions at the library, I haven't had two businesses the same yet, and each one and everyone's reason for starting their business again just reminds me of like why I've done mine, and how important it is to support each other and to do things differently.
And what's that, from a coaching perspective, what's like one of the main tips that you would say to someone coming in with a new idea and sitting there in front of you? What sort of things would you say to them about, with your experience of starting your own business? What do you say to them?
So we have people tend to come with. We had a lovely guy the other day who's like, who wants to start a business but he's not really sure what, and so we went through what are you passionate about, what do you really love, what does the world need, and what could you get paid for. So just helping people with like tools and tips. And I really love the wheel of life, where you look at all the different elements that you give your energy to in your life, and you can use that as like your life as a whole, or like elements of your business, and then like one by one take each of them and think about, if life was 10 out of 10 in that part of your life or your business, what would it look like? And where would you rate yourself now? And what's one or two things that you can do to push yourself forward? And it's a very kind of visual tool. So I really love using those tools with people, and just talking about the different resources that you have available to you, where you're trying to get to, and what I've learned in terms of introductions as well. That's something that I feel really grateful for, of being on the networking scene in hospitality, that when people are talking to me about an idea and I think, oh, you should talk to so-and-so, and that I can expedite their journey in that sense. But just listening, asking the right questions, and and all those what if questions. What if you don't do it? What if you don't? What if you don't start? And making sure that people know what they want, where they want to go next. And it's just the first step. It doesn't have to be, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? What's one thing that's going to make you feel more in control in this situation, and working that through with them.
Love that, because that is sometimes the difficult thing, isn't it? Because some people will talk about that 5-year plan. Oh, what's your 5-year plan? And actually, sometimes that can be quite daunting, can't it? I don't actually know what that looks like 5 years' time, but what I do know is in 6 months or a year, and trying to condense that to a point where you go, okay, I know what can I achieve right this second to get me to that next step. I think that's where
And for some people, it's just, I need help in the next week because I've got so overwhelmed by it all. I think we're very good at being in our heads as humans, and so I think the gift of a coach is that it gives you a space to just talk. So sometimes people come see me and it's just given them a chance to just offload, and they just feel better just having spoken to someone that's listened and asked the right questions. Other times it's getting it on a paper and drawing it and getting creative. It just depends on where your mindset's at with it. But actually, it's just giving someone like the time and the space to think, actually, I'm really struggling today, so what can I do? How can I get out of my head today? And it's like, right, well, let's talk about it. Let's give you a plan. Let's, have a think about journaling this. What's are you better with an app? Or are you better with pen and paper? Like, what's your vibe? And then working out actually what's a way that they can take control for themselves every day, rather than what's your 6-month goal or your 5-year plan. You need to get good sleep. You need to eat right. You need to be in the right mindset. what do you need to get there, and talking about routines. And a lot of the time I found with my coaching, you are coaching an entrepreneur that wants to take over the world, but what you end up talking about is their bedtime routine or their morning routine that's going to set them up for it. It's not just about, we are the machine that makes these businesses work, and if the machine's not working, the business won't work.
So I'm keen then to talk about that, because that's something that I guess certainly from my point of view, I struggle with the whole, like you mentioned about burnout a couple of times. Are you quite good at recognising that when you're getting to that stage? How do you, because this is your baby, you can listen to you talk about it passionately, are you good at switching off? Have you got that balance, work-life balance?
No. I'm trying. I'm better, but I do notice sort of the fatigue, when the fatigue sets in more now. So I've kind of just started to recognise those sort of traits in myself where I'm like, oh, I'm not sort of sleeping right, or things are on my mind, or that I just need to sort of have a little 10-minute disco nap. Then I'm like, right, okay, so you need to review what's happening. And then I use all those coaching tools on myself, and I've got my mentors as well. But it is really important that you start to recognise your own triggers, and I think actually I need to go and talk to a mentor, or I've got to just spend some time just journaling, or I just need to meditate, or I just need to have a drink with my best mate, because actually that side of things is missing. So sometimes that can be difficult because I'm so busy organising everyone else's diary. Sometimes I forget to organise my own. But I do really love time on my own. As sociable as I am, I really love my house. Like, my house is my sanctuary after everything that I went through, having this property that's all mine and is all my personality. Now I call her the baby house because she took me 9 months to get her, and I'll like hug the walls of that house. So I just love her so much. She made such a difference to my life, and so I love time in my house. I find it really relaxing. I love like good trash TV, but I also love just working. It's like I love my business so much, and it's quite hard to prise my phone out of my hand because I'll always be doing something on social media, or I've had a new idea for something, or I'm just answering a new vendor that wants to come and work with us, or a venue that wants to do something cool. But I do it because I love it. But you have to be so careful. I have to be so careful that I don't burn out, because I obviously host everything, so I need to be there, and I want to always give people like my absolute best. So I do just have to rein myself in every now and again.
Because it's hard. Again, it's interesting to talk about that, because it's sometimes hard for me. Similar. If I really love what you do, but I feel guilty that if I'm not doing something like within the business, I'm trying to take this time out. I watch trash TV or whatever that looks like, and I go, but this stuff needs to be done. So but just trying in my head, trying to go, there's always going to be stuff that needs to be done, and actually, I'm okay with that. Just let's leave it. I need that little bit of time out. But then there's that balance between going, I actually really love it because I want to be in it, and then it's so hard to get that balance sometimes. I struggle with massively, I think.
Yeah, it's huge. We both love the communities that we've built up, and we both love our podcasts, and there's always new ideas that are going to be flowing. I think it's great because you've got people you can delegate. You've got a lovely team that you've built, they're building around you now, and I'm excited when I can get to the point where I can build a bigger team around me as well. But when people have said, you should get someone to do X and Y for you, I'm like, those are things I really like. I like those bits. So there's no part, apart from finance, there's no part of my business I don't love doing. Merrily give someone my accounting to do. 100%. But any other part of it, I love it. Like, I love doing all the writing, I love the social media, like I love hosting it, I love doing all the networking stuff. I love it, but I know that I can't forever do it by myself, and so I'm excited for when there's a team who feel as passionate about me. Lots of people have said, how's it going to work in other cities because you won't be there, but there are other people like me out there.
I guess that's down to then culture, isn't it? Like what I talk about, I hear a lot about culture, and it's about the culture that you're trying to create within the community, the culture that Connected Brighton will stand for, Connected London will stand for, and people, if they buy into you, even as whether you go the franchise route and you go down that route, if that franchisee buys into the brand that is Connected, then they will have that passion, hopefully, that comes across the same as you do. That's how it'll grow, isn't it? And that's just about creating that right culture, isn't it? That within. And
your brand, we talked about inside stories and those wonderful boys, because understanding your values and what you're doing it, why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, what does it mean to you? You know, understanding that and then being able to present that back to people is what resonates. And so that's, in Brighton we can be 100% independent, and you know, who knows what's going to happen over the next year. We might have to make that 90%, but it might be that Manchester has to be 60-40 because they just don't have enough independence. But our brand value will always be that the majority of our work is done with independent, small and local businesses, but we will have to bend and flex depending on those, but that brand value won't change.
Love that.
But you're the same with your stuff though. I think that's the thing, you know, you've built up this community and people, you know, everybody talks about you. You are, I always talk about this like the top tier in the networking scene. And like you're there. But it's because people love you, because you have been so honest with your story, and people know that you're only trying to do good things and you're really passionate about trying to do good things for people. Like, and it's not fake, it's not shady. It's not like you say that to everybody and then you go and undercut someone behind everyone's back. It's like, we know that you're true to your word, and you are so authentic with it. And that values and those brand values are what people then associate with you, and whatever brand you will create and continue to create and continue to grow, that's the value that they'll attach because of how you are.
That's kind of so. I guess there's a part of me that struggles, like, from like this whole, again, imposter syndrome kicks in, because you go around like a personal brand. I can't possibly be a personal brand, and you look at it and go, but when people relate that business to your brand, this is again back to you and Connected Brighton, I guess both of them, on both of our parts, is back to culture, about like, if I'm not doing it, and I'm like with Fernballs, for example, I'm not doing it, I'm not there, it's not going to be as good, or if they're not going to do what I need to be done, so it's got to be me that's there. County business clubs has got to be me that's there. But then there's only so much you can do, isn't there, on that part? So how do you then scale a business? It's not scalable. A personal brand necessarily isn't scalable. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, because it's an interesting one for me, because I always want to be known as like the founder of the Connected brand, and you know, the ultimate, you know, connected in the city, and then you'll have all the different cities that you can connect to. So I always want to be known for that, and I'll always have Brighton will always be my patch. But I just have to accept that other people will do it, and some people might do it better than me. Some people won't. Some people won't resonate as strongly. But there's only one of us, and so ultimately you have to give it over at some point.
Of course,
And I can never do my international book tour, Sam, unless someone else is hosting my events for me.
Of course.
You know, I'm going to have to take hands off at some point. But I feel really excited about who is going to be part of this business. You know, when I've got bigger and funding and can have a team and people have the same ethos, because everybody loves the business. I haven't had one person yet be like, don't think that's going to work.
No, absolutely. Well, look, I want to just, as we're coming towards the end, a couple of questions I want to touch on. Just one, I've been asking for the last 40 odd episodes nearly for like, what does success look like to people, and I was adamant around that, but my mindset has really sort of changed around that, because my narrative around success is changing slightly, and I think what I'm asking more now is what does happiness look like to you like now?
There has to be happiness for me is being around the right people in the right place. Like I love the life I have, and that's happiness to me, at whatever scale it is. Like I love it today, I will love it tomorrow. I'll find something to love in it even on a bad day. So it's that, for me, that perspective and being grateful, that's what makes me happy.
Brilliant. What a brilliant answer. I love that. What does the future hold for Lyndsey Clay?
Well, domination, as discussed.
Of course.
But I would love to franchise the brand. I would love to write books about the journey that got me there, so that I can have a platform to inspire and motivate others and get franchisees, and just continue on this journey and see where it's going to lead me, and be very open to what will happen. That's the absolute vision for me, for sure. But how long it takes and how I'll get there, like, who knows? But I'm excited for the next step.
That's so bright. It's been so refreshing just to listen to, like, I mentioned your positive energy and your enthusiasm, and especially just for life in general, but for the brand as well, and what you're trying to create is just so inspiring to listen to. But just a main thing for me, I guess personally, to take away is so much about like how it seems very much that you are where you are right now is a great place, and there is these great ambitions and stuff, and which no doubt that you're going to get there and do that, but actually just being so present and happy with and content with where you are right now is such an amazing space to be in. And just thank you, I guess, for sharing your story and, you know, all those ups and downs and the whole journey, which is just a true inspiration. It really is. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's part of what gives me that perspective, because, you know, in those sort of dark moments where you're beating yourself up for everything that you're not or everything that you won't be, and not looking at actually what you have got and who you are and what's good about that. And so that has definitely been one of my kind of coping techniques with all of those things that have happened, is to just kind of go inward and be like, we're okay. Like, today's okay, we're going to be okay, and we're going to be okay because what's good? I've got a beautiful house, I've got a wonderful family, I've got great friends, I'm healthy, I've got a business that helps people. All the different things that I can always think of things that, or just writing out lists of things that I love and just reminding myself of how much joy there is in the world to be had, and not focusing on just like one negative thing. There's a whole world out there.
Amazing. What a lovely way to come to an end. No, it's
been
brilliant.
So emotional,
I'm welling up a little bit. I'm not gonna, look, let's finish with, as always, with our quick fire questions, if we can. So, one piece of advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
So much advice I would give to her. But I think one of the biggest things would be around sort of like just health and fitness, just the difference that being like exercise has made sort of for my mental health and my physical health. I just think just getting into better, healthier habits when I was that age would have made a really big difference.
Cool. Who has been your biggest inspiration throughout your journey, and why?
That's such an interesting question, because there's no one person, because I've just been blown away by everybody that I've met on the business journey. In particular, I'm so inspired by everybody that's got a business, because I'm learning so much about it, and I just love hearing why people started their business, or how long their business has been going for, or advice that they've got for me, and people who wanted to be mentors and who've just sort of scooped me up and said, look, I think what you're doing is great. Or I've been just inspired by everybody, so I feel so grateful to even be part of this community. It's blown me away.
I love that. And to be honest, I'll give a very similar answer when someone asked me about who inspires me. And I said, to be honest, one of the reasons I my motivation, I guess, for starting the podcast is that I listen to so many podcasts, and they're all what people would deem as high achievers, and, you know, entrepreneurs who've made millions or whatever that looks like, and high achieving sports stars. Whereas I do think that people who inspire me are the people within this amazing community that we've got, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this, because everyone's got a story to tell, and come on and tell it, and we've all got whatever path you're on that journey. So I'm 100% in agreement with you on that. Great answer. Final one. Could you recommend a business book or podcast for our listeners that has any impact on you?
A business book?
A business book or podcast, yeah. Or
specifically business-based?
No, not specific. A book or podcast.
A book or podcast. So in terms of I do like the Jen Sincero, You're a Badass at Making Money. That's a really good business book. Yeah. But the thing that really helped me recover was reading The Secret. And I remember lots of people had said about The Secret, and I was like, oh yeah. And then my sister bought it for me for Christmas. I think like 2016 she bought it for me, and it just made me realise that I had no way of knowing where I was going. So of course I felt lost, and it just reminded me that I needed to be clear on what I wanted out of life. As how would I know if I had it, or how was I going to get it? And I have a sign up in my house that says sexy, wealthy, healthy, carefree, happy and loved. And I realised if I felt those 6 things, then that was a great platform for me. And when I went through it, I was like, I have all those things already. And it just instantly gave me this kind of confidence and sort of grounding that, okay, we've got the basics, now where are we going to go? To just think about, and obviously I had no clue about a business at that time. That was about, you know, sorting out my divorce and moving houses and getting my career where I wanted it to be, and going on nice holidays, and, you know, exercising right, all of that. But it just gave me the perspective that I needed some kind of outline to my life. Otherwise I was just going to be that human crane fly bumping around, not knowing where I was going, and feeling like I wasn't succeeding and I wasn't achieving anything. But I was achieving tons, I just had the wrong perspective, and I just needed a plan.
Brilliant. And then that element of fulfilment then is there, isn't it? Like, talking to people who have struggled with that, when they get to the end of this goal that they want to achieve, they don't feel fulfilled because they haven't found out what them basics are right at the start. And What an amazing thing to share.
Yeah, I think it's that old, you've got to have a love for yourself first. That's where the true happiness comes from, is being really comfortable in your own skin. And that's taken me a long time to get to that point, and sometimes it can feel like, it's like any muscle. There are times when people will fall down and you've got to remind yourself and pick yourself back up again, and I'm absolutely no different to that. But I feel the happiest in this skin than I've ever felt.
Amazing. What an amazing way to finish. Thank you so much. This has been lovely.
Thank you
it's
for
been
having me.
inspiring. I've loved every second of it. So thank you for sharing your story. And that, as they say, is a wrap.